In this talk, we are going to cover one of the biggest problems that we face, not only in research, not only in our historical research or our scientific research, but also just in our lives. And that is the problem of the human ego. All right, the human ego is probably one of the most poisonous things that we have to fight when we start to research a topic. When we start to get heavily into something, the ego is going to start creeping in. Every single human has this problem. Do not look at this recording. Do not look at your phone. Do not look up into the sky and say, "No, AA, I am above my ego. I have already mastered my ego." Garbage. Do not lie to me. The ego is not something you master and move on with life. The ego is something that you have to fight and deal with your entire life. If you exist as a human being, the ego is something that you have to deal with. Now, dealing with the ego is extremely important in our research, but it's also important to learn how to deal with our ego in our day-to-day life. This talk will not just be about how to manage your ego within a research community. That will be the focus, but everything that we discuss here can be translated to every single aspect of your life. Using what you can learn here in the rest of your life will help build up every aspect of yourself. Because once you are able to look and face your ego, you're already ahead of the game. You are already above the vast majority of this planet. All right, you already have an edge. So mastering your ego is important. Now, the ego is a challenge to master. Right? There are literally entire philosophies based on trying to master your ego, get it under control, and even ultimately use it for your benefit. Now that's important too. You can actually use your ego for your benefit. We'll get into that as well in a second. But let's go ahead and identify the problems that we face in day-to-day life and within our research communities that might get in the way of us making progress in our research. All right, now egos can present challenges not only in the research community, but the scientific community and your day-to-day community. This affects collaboration, innovation, and the overall progress of scientific research, of all research. I say scientific research because at the end of the day, I think in all honesty, we can pretty much boil down all research as science. I'll continue to probably interchange science and research or historical research. But at the end of the day, our historical research really should be following a scientific method. That said, let's get into the problems and the issues that we find when we deal with egos in our research communities. All right, so the first thing that will pop up, I say the first thing, there's no order to this, by the way. These are all equally important to identify, to keep in mind and keep in focus, and make sure that you are not falling into these traps. Right, now the first problem that we can run into is lack of collaboration. Right, when egos begin to dominate an arena, researchers, scientists, whatever, may be less willing to collaborate and share credit. This can hinder progress and limit the exchange of ideas. Encouraging a culture of collaboration and recognizing the value of teamwork is unbelievably important. All right, everybody in your field probably has some sort of talent to contribute. If you are not collaborating, this is a team effort. Let's boil that down really fast. This is a team effort. This is why controlling your ego is important, because all of research is going to ultimately be a team effort. Don't forget, even though we're focusing on ancient research or general history, we'll talk about other histories as well, and some won't necessarily be ancient. But as we do this, we know for a fact that we have to learn other disciplines to get a good idea of what we're talking about. And then I have people texting me in the middle of the greatest ego speech ever made in human history. They have the nerve to text me. See that ego right there? How disgusted were you with me for maybe a split second if you decided to call me out on my BS? right? That disgusted feeling, remember that. Remember how disgusted you are with people who have an inflated ego. Use that to your advantage whenever you're dealing with your own ego, right? If you feel disgusted about somebody else, how do you think somebody else feels about you? All right, let's move on. Let's move on about the collaboration. So collaboration is important. All right, recognizing the value of teamwork is unbelievably essential. Right? Remember, we are not in this alone. If you let your ego overcome yourself, you will be in this alone. And whatever truth you are looking for, it's not going to happen. So it's important that even if maybe you found a group, right? You can say, I've already got my ego under control. Look at this. I'm surrounded by people. Right? You can still have an ego. You can all still have that ego. Right? It's important to not only identify your ego and take care of it on a personal level. It's important to take care of it at a group level as well. Now that's a little more difficult, and I will go into, that'll be a different talk because that's a whole other level of psychology, but it's important to know that it exists. Now your group is just as culpable for collaborating with other groups or individuals as you are as an individual with other groups and people. All right, it goes both ways. So that's something to remember, to make sure that your group, your institution, whatever you are in, is promoting interdisciplinary research, facilitating collaborations. All right, you will feel rewarded for doing that, and you're also going to get a much better grasp and a much wider swath of information from doing this. All right, you need that access to all those fields. So collaborate. Get rid of your ego to collaborate. Never think that you have it figured out, especially when it comes to history. We'll get into the problems with history later, but there's so many problems with history that if you're somebody who has an ego and you approach history with an ego, you are doing monumental damage to the entire thing. All right, we're moving on. All right. The next issue we run into when we're dealing with our ego is we can find ourselves resisting new ideas. Now, this is a big one, right? This is the obvious one, because most of the time, especially in historical research, whenever there is a new idea that comes to the front and it shows either the academic side or the alt-academic side is completely wrong, the resistance to that idea, to that evidence, is usually monumental, insanely so. I mean, it's just crazy, right? You can present the most obvious evidence to either side, to the alt-academic side or the academic side, right? Depending on the evidence. And one of those sides might just, they should be taking that evidence and running with it, right? There are times where we have found evidence that is just like, here's the answer to your problem. We're done. Here it is. Take the damn answer and move on with life. And then either the alt-academic or the academic side just tells you, no, you're wrong. Our ideas are right. Your evidence is wrong. How frustrating is that? All right. Strong egos can lead to a resistance to new or opposing ideas. All right. Researchers may become unwilling to consider alternative viewpoints or approaches, and this will lead to a lack of innovation. And that is key. That is huge. It's ridiculous. Can you even imagine being so stuck in your ego that you would actually go against innovation in your field? I don't care what your field is. Ridiculous. But people do that. We don't want to fall into that trap. We do not want to lead ourselves into a lack of innovation, right? It's important to foster an open-minded environment that encourages constructive debates and goes and makes sure it grabs from as many fields as you possibly can grab so that you can gather as much possible data and apply it to whatever it is you're working on. And more often than not, you can't do that if your ego is high, because you will be resistant to all of that. None of that crap. You will not be resistant to new ideas. In fact, say that out loud. Say it. Not in your head. Say it out loud. I don't care where you are. On the subway, eating at a picnic. Say it. I will not be resistant to new ideas. Because I will not. Say it loud. Scream it. Yell it. Yell it. Make sure that it is burned into your brain. All right, that's key. Say it a few times. Repetition. It's important. Done saying it? Is everybody looking at you like you're crazy? Good. 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 Because you are now above those people. I'm just kidding. Or maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, let's go on to the next issue. Let's move on. All right. Now, the next issue that an ego can interject into your research is it may get to the point where you begin to withhold information. Or you may delay sharing of your findings to maintain a competitive advantage. Or the big one, secure personal recognition. Right, this is the bad stuff. This is the poison. All right? Openness and transparency are crucial in all of our research. Do not let your ego get in the way of you sharing your discoveries. We live in a day and age right now that we can actually share discoveries with the planet. All right? And if we're honest, that ability is going away as censorship continues. So that's something we may not have forever. So use that now. Do not let your ego get in the way of any of this. Don't let the ego stop you from maybe making those important discoveries that change not only your life, but maybe change your community or your world around you. And this brings us to the next issue. I mentioned community, and I mentioned the world around you. Why? Because that is important whether you realize it or not. Because at the end of your day, your historical research should be elevating not only yourself, but everyone around you in new ways. That brings people together, in all honesty. Right? So the next issue is undermining our colleagues or our friends or our neighbors or anybody within our field or even outside of the field, undermining them for no other reason than your ego is getting in the way. And your ego is getting in the way for some pretty corrupt reasons. These people will discredit their colleagues to gain personal recognition or advancement, right? That greed pops up, right? That ego-fueled greed. Now, what does that do when somebody does that? Now, we've all seen somebody do that, and you feel that acid feeling in your stomach that turns you off from anything that has to do with that person or that person's ideology. So don't be that person. Don't undermine the people around you. Don't even undermine perhaps the side that is even attacking you. All right? If they're attacking you physically, defend yourself. But if it's at some BS academic level, just move on. All right? Don't even waste your time. The next issue that we run into when we're dealing with our egos is that we may find ourselves reluctant to admit mistakes. Right, this is another important one. Like I said, these are not in any particular order, but they are all so extremely important to identify and consistently make sure that you are not doing. So admitting to mistakes is huge. Right, this is extraordinarily important in our research. Why? Because unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, right, we're going to make mistakes. Why? Because we don't have all the evidence. And for ancient historical research, we are never going to have all the evidence. You have lost your mind. Out of your mind if you think that we will ever have all of it. Most of it's gone. All right? So we are going to make mistakes. Now, egos can make it difficult for us to admit mistakes or revise our views in the face of contrary evidence. All right, now this can impede us in any kind of progress that we may have made, and it also leads to the persistence of incorrect or flawed ideas. All right, another well-poisoning problem that we suffer in the research community. All right, the amount of flawed or incorrect ideas that permeate all aspects of historical study is legion right now. and it's disgusting. And there's so much of it now that it's literally created its own solid history within the zeitgeist of normal society, right? So that's probably, you see that. That's why you're here. It's why you're doing research, because you know that's wrong. So it's important to be able to admit your mistakes. This next issue, and it's the last main issue we'll cover, as I don't want this talk to go on for 10,000 years, is an interesting issue. All right, the issue of excessive competition driven by our egos. Excessive competition. Now, too much of anything is bad. That's probably the secret of life as far as I can tell. Too much of anything is bad. All right? So an overly competitive environment driven by our egos can lead to unhealthy rivalries, and it hinders collaboration. That's one of the worst things we can do, right? We already have our egos in the way. Can you imagine if people are so obsessed with their idea and they're competing with their own ideas that they are building themselves up to a level that they cannot listen to anybody? This is everywhere in our research. So excessive competition, this is not a competition. Historical research is not a competition. This is a huge one now that I think about it. Unfortunately, in our current day and age, that's the way it's taken. All right, now, humans are naturally competitive, and that's fine, that's good. Who doesn't like competition? But when we are looking for a truth, the concept of competition is ridiculous and will not be accepted. So if you find yourself competing with your own idea against somebody else, and you find yourself losing yourself in that idea because you are so focused on proving your idea and destroying another person's very particular idea, pull out. That's bad. Move on. No excessive competition. Now that we've covered and outlined a lot of the main issues with ego, please believe that is not the entire list. But it's a good start. All right, those are things to be aware of. Go back and listen to it again if you have to. Repetition is key. Go find other points of view as well to gain a control over your ego, because this is paramount. Now let's move on to some ways that we can deal with our ego. Now, dealing with our ego issues is going to be challenging, right? But with self-awareness and effort, real effort, discipline and effort, it is possible for us to address it and overcome all of this, right? It is possible. I think that's one of the things that everybody has to understand. The ego is a very hard thing to gain control over. You will never conquer it. It will be with you for the rest of your life. That's okay. Don't worry about that. Don't fight that. It is what it is. For whatever reason, humans have an ego, all right? It can benefit us, but more often than not, it destroys us. So let's work on how to control it and use it for our benefit. All right. Now, the first thing we need to do whenever we start dealing with our ego is we need to recognize the issue. We have an ego. All right. We need to be self-aware of our ego. All right. This is the first step. You have got to admit that it exists. You are not above it. Say it out loud again. You are not above your ego. I am not above my ego. You are not above it. Nobody is. It is a scourge that will be with you for the rest of your life, but you can turn it into a tool. All right, so acknowledging that you have an ego or an ego problem and understanding the negative effects on yourself and others is what's going to get you moving in the right direction. All right, reflecting on specific instances where your ego might have caused problems or hindered your growth is going to lead you down the path to conquering and controlling your ego. Be real with yourself. You have an ego. It's okay. We will deal with it. The next tool in our toolbox to deal with an ego is humility. Practice humility. How often have you trained on a day-to-day basis, gone out of your way to practice humility? Practice. I don't think a lot of people in our society understand that you have to practice dealing with stuff. You have to practice how you act around and within your field of study. It does not come instantly, and it will not come from reading some garbage book. You have to turn inward into yourself. Cultivating humility by recognizing and appreciating the strengths and accomplishments of others is going to take you down that road. Acknowledge that everyone has their own unique abilities and experiences that are truly valuable. Everybody is talented. All right, in today's day and age, we do not allow people's talents to come out, unfortunately. Right? It's very important for you to understand that you are responsible for cultivating your own talent. Your phone is not going to do it. Whatever book you're reading is not going to do it. You have to work at it. This is on you. All right? So when we're dealing with humility, it's important that we listen to other people. It is important that we focus on valuing their perspectives and being open to learning from them and with them. We're a team. I cannot stress that enough in the research community. I don't care if it's science or history, whatever. Especially history. I mean, I guess all of it, but whatever. In our historical studies, we do not operate on an island. There are no islands in historical study. We all have to lean on each other. That means you have got to practice humility so that you can focus on listening to others. Look for the value in what their research has brought. See, I can't even speak, so I got to go listen to other people so that I can learn how to speak basic language. Admitting our mistakes is important. And no, I'm not editing that out. I don't care. We're moving on. I'm admitting my mistake. I messed up. I value other people laughing at me right now for not editing this out or being irritated. I get it. But we're going to move on. The next thing that we can use, the next tool that we can use when we deal with our ego is we can practice fostering empathy and compassion towards others. Developing a genuine interest, a genuine sincere interest, not a BS interest. In understanding and empathizing. Holy crap, I can't speak. See these mistakes? See? Even somebody like me makes mistakes. It's important that we empathize. It's important that we empathize with others. All right, it's one thing to listen to them and move on. It's a whole other thing than to sit there and actually legitimately empathize with them and understand where they're coming from. This takes practice. It'll take practice forever. You might be good at it right now. I hope you are. But even if you are good at it, guess what? You still have to keep practicing. It's like any other skill. You have to keep going. For those of you who don't have it, it's okay. Right? That's okay. Practice on it. I'll give another talk about some of this stuff later I'll give more details on how to do some of this stuff. This is just how to deal with these things in a bullet point fashion. Right? But practicing empathy and compassion for others and their position, I promise you will open up new gateways in your research. Building better relationships and reducing the need to constantly assert yourself or prove your superiority is what is going to help build you as a better researcher and a better human. Remember, these skills are not just to be applied within our research communities. They're everyday skills. You can practice this every day. Now, the next thing we can do is we can seek feedback and then learn from the feedback. Now, this is a tough one if you have a built-up ego. Asking for feedback about your personal problems it's inviting criticism, right? This is something that people fear all over the place. Right? It's a real problem, especially nowadays, because people aren't taught how to deal with this stuff, and nor are they taught how to give it. People are not taught how to give and receive constructive criticism. But it's important that you actually go out of your way and find it. Seek it out, right? Ask for feedback from trusted friends, family members, or colleagues. Go talk to them. Be sincere. Practice humility and compassion and empathy for the issue that you've recognized you might have and that you're seeking feedback for. Listen openly to their observations and constructive criticism. Hopefully it's constructive. Even if it's not constructive, that's all right. Being the bigger person is going to be where you develop as a higher level researcher. We'll talk more about that kind of stuff later. But you want to use this feedback as an opportunity for personal growth and self-improvement. That's what all of this is about. Ultimately, at the end of the day, is building you up as a better you, as a better human, as a better leader of a community or a member of a community. Both. Feedback is valuable for gaining a more accurate understanding of yourself. So go look for it. Because a lot of the times I realize when you get feedback, it's probably unsolicited. It's probably from that person who doesn't like you or who just wants to talk crap, make you feel like garbage. That's going to happen in life. All right? You're going to have to deal with that. But that's not the kind of feedback we're talking about. There's a difference in the feedback that is unsolicited and the ones that are solicited. Now, it's important to listen to that feedback and do not take offense to it, because feedback is not going to be inherently positive. I realize that in today's society, everything has to be positive or you're the bad guy, right? You cannot act on that. You have to be prepared for the negative feedback, right? Humility, recognizing your issue, empathizing, and having compassion is going to help you absorb that feedback. Now, once you have feedback and you've done the other stuff and you are working on these other points, the next tool in our ego conquering toolbox here, right? We have a toolbox now of points. And I'll go over them one more time at the end. I'll recap because this isn't long enough. We'll just keep this going because I know you're not doing anything. You're just sitting there. So you are going to listen to me and we're going to keep on talking about how to deal with our ego. You understand? Good. Now, the next tool that we have that we can use is practicing self-reflection. Regularly, often, daily, not hourly, but daily preferably. Take time to reflect on your thoughts, on your emotions, and your behaviors, right? Not just for the day, but for the year, or the week, or the past decade, whatever. Reflect on these points objectively, using critical thinking capabilities. Employing critical thinking capabilities when you are reflecting is huge. And that will give you a good objective outlook on how you are developing. All right? Now, consider the underlying reasons behind your ego-driven actions and then explore healthier alternatives. All right? Now, there's all kinds of alternatives. And because this talk is going to keep going on for 12 years, I'm not going to go into the details of what we can do to help ourselves practice self-reflection. I'll make another talk on that. But I urge you to go seek out resources. Simply go search for how to practice self-reflection. There are entire religions, philosophies, organizations literally built around taking care of this concept. Go do it. Remember, it's on you to go practice. It's on you to step up and get better at these skills. Now, the next thing we want to do, and this is a good positive thing, the next tool we have is the ability to celebrate others' successes. This is the good stuff, right? Isn't it great when in your field of research, somebody brings some brand new evidence that changes the field and only elevates the research in a positive direction? Right? This is awesome. We want to celebrate those successes. right? Instead of feeling threatened or jealous when others are succeeding, celebrate their achievements. In science, that might be more difficult, but you still have to do it. But in historical research, if we find factual evidence that elevates our research, this is exactly what we're looking for. So we never want to feel like we are being threatened. There's no reason to feel threatened. There's no reason to feel jealousy. If you feel these emotions, use the tools that we've discussed to start getting those into perspective. Because when somebody makes a positive discovery, adds to the zeitgeist of the history, that they're doing exactly what we're all trying to do. And guess what? You can take those discoveries and you can build up your own theories off of them. So don't ever feel threatened or jealous. Cultivate a mindset of abundance, where the success of others does not diminish your own worth or potential. All right? Don't stop going. Stay positive with what others have done. Use that positivity as your tool and keep going. That's exactly what we want to see. Do not let your ego step in the way of this. Do not let your ego get in the way of you building relationships with others in the research community in a positive way. We need more positivity than you can believe in this world right now. So do not let your ego destroy that. The next tool that's important, it's very important, that we take into account and that we utilize is we want to learn from our failures. Right? Embracing failure as part of the learning process is key to all of this, because we are going to have failures. In historical research, how often have things just been wrong? We have entire libraries built on lies. These are bad, but they remain part of the zeitgeist because people don't want to learn from their failures. They don't want to admit their failures. They don't want to practice humility. They don't want to practice self-reflection. They're not looking for feedback. Isn't that amazing how all the stuff that we've just talked about correlates into the next step? It's important to keep all of this in mind. All right? Recognize that failure does not diminish your value as a person. Accept that nobody is perfect and that mistakes are quite literally opportunities for growth. One of the best things you can do is be wrong, because you're a human and you're not going to be right all the time. So when you're wrong, that's fine. That means you can now look at that point and you no longer have to worry about it because you've proved it's wrong and you can move on. Right? Perfect. The next tool in our toolbox is practicing gratitude. Seems simple enough, but how often do you hear people say thank you, please? Right? Regularly express gratitude for the positive aspects of your life. Because they are there. I know sometimes it might feel like they are not. I get that there is a lot of garbage going on right now. Do not let that garbage get to you. Practice gratitude with yourself and others. This can help you shift your focus away from constantly seeking validation or external recognition. Don't worry about it. Be grateful for what you have and build that up and share it with others, and be willing to receive others' gratitude as well, to build that whole community up. Seems simple enough, but it's not that simple anymore. Practice gratitude. The next tool we can go into is set realistic goals. Right? This is a problem that both the academic side has and the alt-academic side has on the extreme sides of our spectrum. Their goals are both ridiculous on the extreme sides of the spectrum. Right? You want to focus on personal development and growth rather than comparing yourself to others. Right? So you want to just make sure that your field is growing, that you are growing, that those around you are growing. Right? If you set unrealistic goals in your research, like if you start with a premise that is already ridiculous and way out of bounds of anything that it should ever be, what is that going to do to your research? Right? You've jumped to one of the two sides of the extremes. Do not set goals in research. Don't even set them in science. Don't set those kind of goals. If you're going to set a goal, keep them humble. Practice humility. Practice humility in setting your goals. All right? This is not a race. At least against other people. It might be a race against time, unfortunately. That might be a truism. But keep your goals realistic, right? Embrace the journey of self-improvement rather than obsessing over the end result, because we're going to die not knowing the end result. I just spoiled your whole life, right? We're, as historical researchers, as ancient historical researchers, we're going to die not knowing these answers. All right? That is a truth we cannot get around. So we just need to do our best so that the people that come after us have something to build onto. That's important. Now, the last tool, this might seem simple, but the way things are going nowadays, it's not quite so simple. But it's important, and it may actually be one of the most difficult things to achieve nowadays. And that is surrounding yourself with supportive people. Now, I'm going to talk more about this kind of stuff in a different talk, but I'm going to just outline this tool. You are who you hang out with, right? You have a set of standards, whether you realize it or not, that you have set. And the people you hang out with are a realization of those standards. So if you are surrounded by negative people, by drowsy people, by low energy people, guess what you are ultimately going to be? You will be 100% affected by the people you surround yourself with. Now you can now say, well, I don't surround myself with anybody. Everybody can go to hell. I do my own thing. No, that's bad. And we've already talked about why that's bad. If you find yourself in a position to where you don't have anybody, like nobody, there's not even a negative person there. Our day and age has allowed this to happen. We can exist almost entirely without really dealing with people face to face almost. It's horrible. Absolutely ridiculous. Start looking for communities that you can surround yourself in that are doing what you want to do, that are building up a positive environment. Because that is going to only build yourself up, whether you know it or not. There's a lot of subconscious stuff or conscious stuff going on there. Like I said, we're not going to go into it on this talk. I'll deal with it later. Make sure you surround yourself with supportive people. Now, this has been a lot. Been talking for a while. It's enough. I know my voice is amazing. I know you just can't wait to hear more of it. You just love it. It's amazing. Oh, yeah. I love it. We're going to call it here. This talk dealing with the ego. No. We're not going to call it here yet. No. We'll go over the tools we have really quick. I'm just going to list them really fast. Remember these tools. Recognize the issue with your ego. Practice self-humility. Foster empathy and compassion. Seek feedback and learn from it. Practice self-reflection. Celebrate others' successes. Learn from your failures. Practice gratitude. Set realistic goals. And surround yourself with supportive people. Now, we went into detail with all of these things. And actually, each one of these points, I'm probably going to have to make another talk on as well, because each one of these points, there's a ton of stuff that can be discussed. In fact, I'll do it. I'm not going to do it now. I'll let you go in a sec. But remember these tools. Remember those problems, and remember these tools. Practice them, practice them, practice them. When you turn off this, when you end this little garbage talk I just gave you, right? You're tired of listening to me. You shut this down. You unsubscribe. You're done. Fine. But everything I said is real. Do this in your real life. Apply these tools to your everyday existence. Practice them. I can't stress that enough. You can read 1 million self-help books. You can listen to all the podcasts or whatever the hell it is you want. But if you don't practice all of the stuff that you're told, it's 100% pointless. It will take effort from you to do this. Now, it might be hard at first. And it will be hard, actually. I promise you, especially with the society that we deal with today, it's going to be difficult. And you're going to run into roadblocks. You need to stay strong because this is the correct path. There is a reason why people are being pushed away from this path. I'm not going to get into any of that, but there is a reason why there are people who don't want you doing this. So keep trying this. Every day practice something. Employ it in your life, in your research. Go find something right now that you thought you completely understood and that you're 100%, it's locked down, there's no possible way it's wrong. Go find that right now. Go practice humility in it. Go ask questions. Go find another viewpoint. Right? This is important to your research and everything you do. Go practice.